Hey there, friendos, and welcome to another AIP tutorial. Well, actually, 4 AIP tutorials. See, I'm going to do things a little differently with this one. It's going to be a whole project. It's going to take so long that I'm going to break it up into 4 different episodes. Now, a week ago, I released a build video where I made this Jurassic Park themed light for its 30-year anniversary, and in it I included this motion graphic, and I decided, hey, why not show people how I made it? It was pretty neat to make. So the way this is going to go is the first episode, I'm going to introduce this one. I'm introducing the project, and then we're going to actually set up the project, and then we're going to make some little audio cues that we're going to use for the animation later. And then at the end, we're going to build this blueprint. Now the second episode is going to be creating all the other graphics, like these LEDs, the wires, and all this stuff. Third episode is going to be all the animation, and the fourth episode will be the stylization and any other effects that we're going to add on top of everything. Alright, so let's jump into the first episode, or continue on with the first episode, whatever, let's go. Alright, so here we are in After Effects with a brand new, never been opened project here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to import our assets that we're going to use. So we're going to right click, go to Import, File. We can also go up to File, Import File. We could do that, or we could do multiple files. We just need one file, thank you. So if you downloaded the project files, you want to go to wherever you save them on your computer. We're going to select the 2 assets in the folder. So we have our voiceover and we have a paper texture. So let's hit Open. Bam! All right. So one thing I like to do is get organized before I even really start. So I'm going to take these 2. Select them in our project window, and I'm going to bring them down to this folder icon. And we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call this Assets. Now, for folders like this, I like to do little 2 dashes in front and then all capitals. Now, the 2 dashes will make sure that it's always on top. All right, so we have our Assets folder. We're going to preemptively create another folder called Comps, and this is going to be for our compositions. And that should be good for now. All right, so we have our project set up. Everything here that you're seeing, I'm just in the default mode, like there's no add-ons or anything that I put on here, so this is what it should look like for you. All right, so we're going to open up our assets. We're going to take our voiceover. We're going to pull it down to this icon here so we can create a new composition. So now we have a composition that was automatically created to be the right duration of time, and it just so happens, I think, hopefully, yep, we're at 1920 by 1080. So the settings you want are 1920 by 1080. I'm going to be doing a frame rate of 23.976. Duration, that's automatically set. So we can rename this too. Let's call this main comp, and that will be our main composition. Now, here's where it gets a little crazy. See that? It's in the assets. We want to move that to the comps. There we go. And we'll just open that up so we can actually see all of our comps as we're working. All right, so the first thing we're going to do here with our audio is we're going to open up this little triangle guy. We're going to flip this open and then flip it all the way down to waveform. And we're going to check out the waveform. Now, this is mainly so we can see pauses and stuff so we get a better idea of where everything is located within the audio file. So what we want to do is go through and create markers that will let us know where we need to create our animation beats, if you will. And it's basically just going to be this animation starts here, this animation starts here, this animation ends here, and all that, all that stuff that we need to know. So we don't have to actually use the audio while we're working. It just makes it a lot easier. All right, so we have basically our 23-second long clip, play it back. Let's go over the plan first. I'm going to basically daisy chain the strips together. I'll hook the positive of the first strip to the positive below it. From the opposite side of that second strip, I'll connect it to the one below. I keep going until I've connected all of them. Then I go through and do the same for the ground wires. Finally, I hook up the wires from the battery pack to the very first pads. It should be pretty simple. All right, so that's our clip. So basically, we want to start off with the blueprint background. Then we're going to have the LEDs come in, and then we're going to do the wiring. But we're going to do it in a specific way so it matches up with what I'm saying, with some parts going slower than others. And then the battery pack will come in, and they'll connect, and then they'll light up. All right, so actually what we want to do now, before we do anything else, we're going to hit Command S. And we're going to save this project. We're going to save it so good. So you basically want to go to wherever you want to save it, and let's save it. And I'm going to call this motion graph. It doesn't matter. You're probably not going to call it the same thing. Let's get to the most exciting part, the labeling of the audio file. All right, so first thing we want to do, just after first, so let's go over the plan first. Just about right here. Now, this is not going to be set in stone, so we can adjust things as we go along, but this is just going to be like a basic guideline of our beats that we need to hit within the video. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to move our little doohickey ADD playhead. We're going to move our little play, which sometimes words are hard. They don't come into my brain and then leave my mouth. We're going to take the playhead, we're going to set it where we want it, and we're going to hit Control 8. Now this will create a little marker right here. Now we can take this and we can move this wherever we want. But what we're going to do is we're going to double click on it, and that way we can bring this up here. And we can add comments. But what we're going to do is we're going to type in LEDs, enter, and we're going to hit OK. So look at that. Now we have a little flag that says LEDs, enter. So as you can imagine, we're going to continue on with this. I'm going to basically daisy chain the strips together. I'll hook, and maybe right before I start saying I'll hook the positive to the positive below it and all that, we're going to add another marker, and we're going to call this red wire start. Oops. So if you hit enter while you're in this, it goes to the next line. Now if you have a number pad and you hit enter on the number pad, that completes it. It hits OK. All right, so red wire start. Together, I'll hook the positive of the first strip to the positive below it from the opposite side of. And here's where we're going to start from the opposite side. Here's where we're going to start with our another beat, which is red wire position 2. We'll call it. From the opposite side of that second strip, I'll connect it to the one below. I keep going until all right. And here, between here, is where we're going to create another one. We're going to call this red read wire end. Yeah. Now here, at the next pause, next break in our waveform, is where we start talking about the ground wires. Then I go through and do the same for the ground wires. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start it right about there. Like I said, none of this has to be like set in stone. So we're gonna do black wires. Finally, I hook up the wire, and this is the part about the battery pack. So we'll do right about here. We'll do bat pack enters. Finally, I hook up the wires, and then from where I basically say I'll hook up the wires, I will do another one, lead wires, and then somewhere towards the end here, maybe right here, maybe right about here, to the very first pads. So right about here, right before I say the very first pads, I'm going to create the last keyframe, which is going to be LEDs light. Bam. All right, so another thing that we can do that I didn't mention is we can actually color code these. So, red wire, we can change that to red. Now, it can be get a little difficult to read with some of the colors, but it would be cool if there was an option to change the color of the text to make it more legible. So anyway, we're going to take all the red wires and we're going to turn them to red. Black wires, we're going to leave the same because there isn't a black, but there is none, which is kind of the same, right? So LEDs enter, I'm going to change that to orange because the LEDs are orange before they light up. Yeah, I don't know. I'm literally just making this stuff up as I go along, to be fair. Battery pack, that's electricity, right? So, like cyan, it's blue-ish, like electricity. Lead wires, what's red and black mixed together? Probably like purple. And LEDs light, we're going to switch that to yellow. All right, so from here on out, we're actually not going to be using the audio. So let's just mute it. All right, so let's create our blueprint background. So for that, we're going to create a solid layer. So we're going to right click down in this little window here, go new, solid, and we're going to make it blue. And we're going to make it this blue. Why this blue? I don't know, it's just the one I liked. So once you have this blue, we're gonna hit OK. And from there, we're gonna call this blueprint. All right, so let's create our little graphics to go on the blueprint paper. Okay, new solid. This time, we're gonna make it white. Now, I don't actually need to make it white. You can make it whatever color you want. It's not gonna matter because of the effect that we're gonna put on it. All right, so we have our white solid. We're gonna call this grid large because this will be our large grid. So what we're gonna do is go over to effects and presets, and we're gonna type in grid. And the one we're looking for is under generate grid. And we're gonna put that on top of our grid large. It's got a few settings. We're gonna do it a certain way, but I'll show you what it does. So we have our anchor, and this allows you to change the size of our squares. All right. Now, as you imagine, this could be a little difficult to get a complete square. All right, corner. This is another way of adjusting the size. So basically, it's going from this point to this point, and that's the size of your squares. Now that's too many things to edit. So the way we generate the size actually comes from the size from setting. Right now it's set to corner point, and that means this point plus this point equals grid size. So if we bring up the drop-down menu, you can see we can select corner point, width slider, and width and height sliders. Problem with this, you got 2 points to adjust to make squares. Width and height slider, you have 2 things to adjust to make squares. Width slider, you just got 1. That's what we're going to go with. So we're going to make this 100. And this number will be very important throughout the whole... Oh, okay. So since we messed around with the anchor point here, our graphics a little shift. So we got shifted, rather. Words are hard. I'll say again, words don't come out right sometimes, you know. So what we can do with this, to fix this, to remedy this, is just go anchor. Right-click on it, go reset. That'll reset everything. So like I said, this 100 is going to be important. We're actually going to use, here's the thing. We're creating a blueprint grid that we're actually going to use to create the graphics. So it's neat. So we're going to move on to our border. We're going to set the border for this one to 4. And this is why I said we don't really need to worry about the color of the actual solid, because we can set the color here. Now, we're going to keep it white. For opacity, we're going to change that to 25%. All right, so we have our grid large. What we're going to do is select on the layer. We're going to hit Command D to duplicate it. Now we're going to hit Enter on the keyboard, and that can change our layer name. And we're going to type in grid small. What I want to do is for this to be, I want the large grid squares to be kind of broken down into 5, like 5 by 5. For that, for the width, what we can do is take our 100, divide that by 5, it's 20. Sorry, I jumped the gun with the answer. So basically what this is doing is because we have this set to 25% opacity, it's actually building on the opacity of the existing grid and making that just a little bit more pronounced than the actual broken down grid of 5 by 5. But border, we're going to set that to 3. All right, so now we have our grids. Now let's create the little rectangle that goes around it. So we're going to select our rectangle tool, and what we're going to do, if we have a layer selected and we click and drag, we're creating a mask and not a shape layer. We want to create a shape layer. Get rid of that mask. So you want to make sure that no layers are selected down here. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring this down a little bit so we get a little, there we go. And we're going to go from this corner right here. We're going to try to make sure we're as much in the corner as possible. We're going to bring it down to this corner. So right now it's, let's make this white. And if you do the rectangle tool and you've got like a fill, let's say, I don't know, like this, if it looks like this, this is wrong. So to get rid of the fill, we don't click on this, that selects the color. What we do is actually click on the word fill, and then you have your options up here of what kind of fill you want. You can do a gradient, you can do a radial gradient, or none. And we want none. We don't want any fill. No fills. If your name is Phil, get out of here. All right, so pixel width, we're going to make that 5. Yeah. All right, so that's our rectangle for our blueprint. Actually, I'm going to rename this to blueprint background. Our shape layer, we can rename that to rectangle. Ooh. All right, so we're going to hit T to bring up the opacity of this layer. We're going to set that to 50%. All right, this is all coming together. So in our original, we have little crosshairs in the corners. That's going to be pretty simple to create, and let's get to it. So what we want to do for this is I'm going to create a new composition. I'm going to make this 100 by 100 and make sure it's the same length and all that stuff and hit OK. But first, crosshairs, CH. Actually, I want to go back into the project here. I'll show you something. If we go in the project window, select on our actual layer here, and I'm going to rename this and hit enter. I'm going to rename this to PC for pre-composition. And this lets me know, the PC at the end lets me know that this is like the base layer. This is where the graphics are going to be. So we're actually going to bring it into the main comp and then recomposition. We'll get to it. Anyway, so from here, actually I'm going to move this to the comps layer, or folder rather. I'm going to show you a neat trick for how you can get a straight line right down the center of your composition. Here we go. We're going to take the rectangle tool. We're going to double click on it. There we go. So a rectangle, we're going to open that up, rectangle 1, rectangle path. We're going to go to the position here. We're going to click on this chain link and we're going to break that chain. So here we have our two axes, the x-axis and the y-axis. Now we want to take the x and we make that 0. We got a straight line, baby. All right, so I think I'm going to set this to maybe 4. So I said we want crosshairs, right? So what we're going to do now is we can actually do this a couple different ways. We can select on a rectangle 1, hit Command D to duplicate it. And what we can do is we can open up this and we can set this size on the X to be 100 and the size in the Y to be 0. There we go. We have a crosshair perfectly centered and everything like that. So we have our rectangles. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to our rectangle tool. We're going to click on it and hold that down. Go to the ellipse tool. Now we're going to double click on that. Boom. Let's open up our ellipse path 1. And let's bring this down. And I want to bring it to about halfway between here and here. No particular reason, I just think it's neat. Actually, I'll leave it like this. So I just happened to land on 69. That was not on purpose. Everybody relax. It's not that type of channel. All right. So this is done. Actually, we can, maybe I will set this to 5. We'll set it to 5, and then we'll bring it into the main comp, and then we'll adjust whatever we need to adjust. All right, so we got our main composition. We're back in here now. We're going to take our crosshairs PC. We're going to stick that right here. All right, it's a little big. That's fine. I knew it was going to be like that. It's just working with a smaller composition. Anyway, so we're going to move this over to, I would say, from here, 2 blocks down and 2 blocks over. So at this point right here, it's not going to be perfect right away. You can even use your little arrow keys, as long as your move tool is selected, to kind of shift it around. Anyway, so we're going to take this, we're going to hit S to bring up the scale, and we're going to bring this down. What I'm going to do is going to hit Shift, Command H. This will hide any like layer overlays and stuff like that. I want to see what I'm doing here. I'm just gonna like adjust this here and there. So I'm gonna make the circle a little bit smaller. Now getting rid of the funny number. And it automatically updates in this composition. All right, so we're going to select the layer. We're going to hit Shift Command C to pre-compose it. And we're just going to call it Comp 1 because I don't know what else to call it. So we can duplicate it, Command D, hit S. What we can do is use our scale to actually duplicate this and rotate it around each corner. If we uncheck our little chain link here, so if we go to the X scaling, we can add a little subtraction sign, minus sign, a negative sign in front of that. Boom, it's all automatically in that corner where we need it. So now we can take both of these, duplicate them. I'm going to show you something here. I'm going to hit Command, close bracket, and that'll bring everything to the top. All right, so for both of these, I'm going to open up the scale by hitting S. And this second one, it's going to be minus and minus. And then for the third one, it's going to be positive 100 and negative 100. Boom. Whoops. Okay, I see what I did there. So you want to deselect your layers and then reselect the one that you want. Get rid of that. There we go. So we're going to take all of these. We're going to shift select them. We're going to hit Shift Command C to pre-compose. We're going to call this crosshairs comp. Now let's hit T on the keyboard to bring up the opacity. And the opacity we're going to set to 50%. All right, so this is all our graphics for our blueprint. So what I'm going to do is take everything above the blueprint background. So we're not going to include that. So all the grids and stuff like that. We're going to take all of them. We're going to pre-compose them. And we're going to call this BP Blueprint Parts. And we're going to take the blending mode and we're going to set that to soft light. Now here's where our other asset comes into play, the paper texture. So we're going to add that on top of everything. All right, so we're actually going to use 2 versions of this. So what I'm going to do is take this, I'm going to pre-compose it, Shift Command C again, and we're going to call this paper text holder. Oh no, PC, duh. All right, so we're going to set this to overlay. So now we have a paper texture on our paper blueprint. Oh, it's paper now. Well, we're going to take this an extra step further, and we're going to create some actual creases in the graphic. So we're going to take our blueprint parts, and we're going to add a displacement map. And that's under Distort Displacement Map. And we're going to set that onto our blueprint parts. Now, we actually want to duplicate our paper texture PC. And we're going to set this to normal. But we're also going to make it invisible. We're going to poke its eye out. So go back to our blueprint parts. And what we want to do is the displacement map layer, we want to set that to the second paper texture. All right, so I'm going to set both of these to luminance. And I'm going to bring up the max horizontal displacement. I'm going to bring it up a little bit more than I actually would in the project to show you something. As you can see, this looks like Dookie. Even at the numbers that I have previously selected of 11 and 11, you can see it's still like, it's bumpy. Now, what's going on here is you're getting the actual, all of the texture from the paper. We want to basically extract all this information, the crease information, but not like, this grainy looking stuff. So what we can do is we can go to our paper texture PC, the top one, the one that we're using as the map, and we can add a fast box blur. Now this is just kind of a quick and dirty solution. So that's under blur and sharpen, fast box blur. Let's add that on top of there. Now let's, maybe make it 2 and bring down the iterations to 2. That way we just have a little less detail. If you notice, nothing is changed within our displacement map. Still looks like Dookie. It's all fuzzy and stuff. So what we want to do is under displacement map layer, we're going to set that from source to effects and masks. So that way it's reading from the actual effects that are placed on top of it. Now it smooths that out a good bunch and it looks pretty decent. So like I said, the numbers that I have selected here, we're not going to go too crazy with it. If you go too crazy with it, it starts looking a little funky. For this particular instance, 11 and 11 are good numbers. Now you might notice, bring this up in here, you might notice that at some points your grid's kind of escaping the paper. So what we can do is edge behavior, wrap pixels around. I have done this countless times, and every time the only thing I did was wrap pixels around, and it worked. Why is it doing this? Why is this happening? Interesting. Okay. I don't know why I thought maybe this was the solution, but it ended up being the solution. If I go over to the project window here, you'll notice down here it says 32 bits per channel. That's the color information. All right. So if I go back to our blueprints and I hit wrap pixels around, it makes a mess. All right. But here's the thing. We don't need 32 bits per channel. I like to use that for bright objects and stuff. We're going to go to 16. All right. But to do that, we alt click on this little box until it gets there. Now watch this. It works. #learning. All right, with that, that's the first episode complete. So tomorrow, episode 2, we're going to make the actual graphics. See you next time.